us or no? Should we still waiting for her?
I just resent her the link, so I think she should be here.
Oh, good. There's Senator Winter.
Yes.
Good. And we'll begin in about 1 minute here. Let's just give a few more folks a chance to join here. We'll begin in about 1 minute. I want to thank everybody who's been involved. Welcome, everybody. Really important news today about the progress forward for our regional transportation district. So important for our economy, for people being able to get to and from work in the places they love. I want to start by thanking everybody who's been involved with this process. Senator Faith Winter and Representative Matt Gray, the chairs of the transportation committees on both bodies. Thank you for spearheading this task and being strong partners for really making sure that RTD can live up to its potential. Thank you to RTD Board Chair Angie Rivera Malpidi, and thanks to our local and regional governments that really have an important part to play in this process. Now, real reform is hard. We get that. I joined probably most of the people on this call in voting for fast tracks in 2004. I was very excited that by 2017, I'd be able to take the light rail in from Boulder to Denver and back. I know that we were notified of delays, and I thought maybe we would be done by 2018 or 2019. But of course, currently, that delay is something like 2 decades, and I've let RTD know many times that that's obviously unacceptable. We all understand a year or two delay. But we, voters in much of the area that thought that it would be completed by 2017 still haven't seen that done. We know real reform is hard. It's a journey to transform RTD into a dynamic 21st century transit agency. It really takes strong character, and I salute the RTD board for taking this step to be transparent, to listen, to be open for ideas from improvement. Part of what this does is it will fast track ideas for improvement for consideration. With a thoughtful group that Representative Gray, Senator Winter, and I are going to help put together in the days and weeks ahead. And it's my sincere hope that we'll continue to work in good faith, because this mass transit solution is simply too important to our area to write off or to sweep under the rug. This has to be successful for our economy, for people to be able to get to work, for planning in the metro region, for economic development in the metro region. This work of planning on regional transportation is absolutely critical for our success. And it's our responsibility as elected officials to help bring about that new reality. It's not enough for us to complain or say we don't like something. We have to roll up our sleeves and get to work to make it better. And I know that Representative Gray and Senator Winter and the RTD board are deeply committed to do that. And that's why we're here today to announce a step in moving forward with the RTD Accountability Committee. Over the next year, this independent committee, when the appointments are made, it's independent. It'll be composed of both regional representatives and transportation experts and riders and experts. Will conduct a top to bottom review of RTD and recommend the steps that are needed systemically to have a regional transportation district that really reflects our needs of the Denver metro area. The work's going to include a complete review of recent financials and recent audits, the structure of RTD governance and leadership, a review of the short-term and long-term prioritization of resources to make sure that the limited resources they have are maximized, how RTD can better serve all riders, including those with disabilities, how it can serve transit-dependent populations better, how we can address coverage gaps and prioritize route planning, and how the district can serve its entire service area. And finally, determination of the long-range financial stability of the agency and how we can achieve that stability with the growth we have while meeting the core mission of the Regional Transportation District. The members of this commission have a lot of different expertise: local government, economic development, human resources, multimodal transportation, transportation equity, how it impacts riders with disabilities, financial planning, urban planning. We need all of that thinking, that we really come up with the best process around how we can make sure that the Regional Transportation District is a strong credit to our community and a key partner in making growth work for everyday Coloradans. That natural tension between growth, meaning longer commute times, more traffic, and yet the economic benefits. How can we turn that growth into a positive by having a real regional transportation district that empowers people with the transportation choices in how they get to work or to enjoy their recreation? And look, in RTD, and I think they know this and acknowledge this with this step, they know that they have a lot of work ahead to rebuild the trust of the people that they serve, both regionally as well as vulnerable populations. And especially given the times we live in with the daily protests for justice and equality, there's no better time to apply that equity lens to every part of our society. And of course, that includes movement equity, transportation equity, and RTD is an important part of that picture. So this is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to really reimagine our transportation system for the 21st century. For a region that is vibrant and growing, that meets the needs of residents and commuters and tourists, gives taxpayers good value for their dollars, meets the needs of our entire community, and really everybody impacted by RTD. And I'm very hopeful for the future. This is just a first step, a thoughtful first step in rolling up our sleeves and getting to work in a collaborative way. And I want to thank RTD for taking this first step. And I look forward to working with our senators, our representatives, and RTD really in the months and years ahead to deliver a transportation system worthy of the people of our great state. With that, I'll turn it over to Senator Faith Winter, the chair of the Transportation Committee in the Senate, who's really been a champion in spearheading the efforts for change. Senator Winter.
Great. Thank you so much, Governor Polis, and for all your help on this issue. Thank you to my other transportation chair, Matt Gray, and RTD and all the other partners that have been involved. This is a long time in the making. I actually did start getting involved in RTD in 2004, working on the Fast Tracks initiative as well, carrying petitions for that and turning out young voters for that initiative. And we have to have a strong transit agency if we're going to be successful in the metro region on so many issues. And time again, we've struggled with RTD, and I think this is a new day and a new start and a new collaborative effort to make sure that we are creating that transit agency that we need in the metro region. And first and foremost is making sure that the transit agency works for all of the riders, from low-income riders to disabled riders to riders throughout the district, that we're evaluating how to both cut services and add services and making sure we're doing that. This is also about looking out for the RTD employees. We know that there was issues and problems with recruiting drivers and keeping drivers, which is why we have human resources folks involved in this. This is also about us being able to meet our climate goals throughout the state and our regional climate goals. And we know we cannot meet those climate goals without a strong transit agency. And so I'm very excited about this collaborative effort. I thank everyone for coming along and announcing this today. And also this effort has a lot of opportunity for public input, because we know that public input is going to be essential in actually finding the solutions that make RTD strong, the solutions that make sure they're serving their riders. And so I encourage the public to get involved, and I can't wait to see what this effort turns out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my other transportation chair in the House, Representative Matt Gray.
Thank you, Senator Winter, and thank you, Governor Polis. We are excited about this. I mean, the truth is, never been able to fully catch up from the last recession that we had. You know, after the fast track selection, there are a few things that I was about to say derailed, and there's no way to avoid puns when you're talking about transportation, but the overall fast tracks plan was the last recession that we had, but obviously haven't been able to catch up even during that period. And I think there's a couple important things as we look at our economic recovery now that it's important for us to focus on. One is the infusion of almost $250 million from the CARES Act into RTD. That's good news. We're going to need that assistance in order for RTD to stay strong. But with public investment, we want to have accountability. And so we want partners to be watching to make sure that that money gets invested in the best possible way. The other, though, is the flip side of the coin is we're bringing in a lot of from local government area to be part of this, because part of this is it's easy to criticize the RTD, but also this is a clarion call out to the other local governments and other agencies and invested community members to say, I'm willing to step up and help. And what we're going to do is we're going to recruit a team of people who are willing to step up and help, who have ideas, but are also going to say, you know what, we're all in this together. We need to have a successful mass transit system. And we're bringing more people who are willing to say, not just, I have some issues with how RTD is operating, but I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and be a part of it. And so I'm very excited about that and excited to help out as best I can. And I think at that point, I will turn it over to Angie, the RTD chair.
Gracias por estar aquí. Bienvenidos a todos. Thank you for the invitation to be here and welcome to everybody. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today, joining Governor Polis, Senator Winter, and Representative Gray as a community advocate and an elected official. This is what true partnership and collaboration looks like to me. Together, we've done a lot of hard work to develop what I believe is a thoughtful process for really taking a deep dive into RTD. And I'd like to thank my colleague on the RTD board, Director Lynn Geisinger, who is our chair of communications and government relations, and all of her work for helping me bring this together. You know, RTD has been facing challenges for quite some time, and we have so many competing priorities of operating one of the largest transit systems in the country, and then COVID hit, further compounding our challenges. We're all dealing with the stress of these uncharted waters. This timing, though, could not be better for this committee to come together. While key community leaders truly have differing views on RTD, I believe that the power of diversity that will come from this committee's representation is going to provide invaluable perception, and that the RTD board is really looking forward to listening to what they have to say. We all want RTDs to succeed, and actually we have to have RTDs succeed, as the governor so poignantly pointed out. For over 50 years, RTD's been the lifeline for so many people. The leader of expanding mobility and a catalyst for economic development. I just want to share with you that the RTD board and staff, we are committed to working with the committee through openness and transparency. And we stand ready to learn from our partners so we can enhance our collective service to everyone. So, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we are available for questions from the media and participating members of the public. Are there instructions that we need to give for questions? Do we have staff on the call?
Reporters will be unmuted in the order in which they responded.
Great.
Governor and esteemed guests, this is Nathaniel Miner from Colorado Public Radio. I think Chair Gray mentioned this a little bit in talking about money, but that does seem to be at the core of RTD's issues right now. They've been, they promised all these train lines. They've been pushed to meet deadlines for them. They took out a bunch of loans when the Great Recession hit. And now, they have hundreds of millions of dollars in debt service payments every year. Are you ready to take some of that external pressure off of RTD to expand, to build that train to Boulder so that it can instead focus on just maintaining operations and its current service levels?
And this is Matt. Is your question, does the state have financial resources to come in and relieve debt service payments for RTD?
No, the question is, are y'all going to stop pressuring RTD to build the Boulder train? Because it just can't afford to, and it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I don't think that we're not asking RTD to do the impossible, right? Like RTD has a sales tax that was established by the 2004 question and then the ballot questions before that. The purpose of this is not to RTD to do the impossible, to go and raise a unicorn. It's not that. It's to say that with the resources that we have and the governance structure that we have, are we being as efficient and effective as we possibly can, both for the ridership and for those who are particularly reliant on it. But this is not just a committee where folks from up in my neighborhood and the governor's neighborhood just yell at RTD because the train isn't there. It isn't there. We're upset that it isn't there. I was looking forward to it also. But this is much more about effective governance with the resources that exist, not just asking RTD to accomplish the impossible.
And it's about what the path forward is for rebuilding trust, because there's a lot of angry taxpayers who've been paying for service since 2004, and the service is not on the horizon. So, you know what? It's not about Monday night quarterbacking, whether projections were off for 2004 or whether the world changed. It's about what is the path forward for how we can better serve people and reestablish trust with taxpayers who rightfully so feel that they didn't get what they were promised.
So this question is for Chair Malpiede. I have a question kind of about the intersection between the recent budget forecasts and this commission's work. I mean, first off, if you could talk a little bit about what concerns you have going into the new budget year with the $252 million projected deficit, and then what, if any, role you think this commission may have in helping to untangle that?
Oh, well, thank you for the question. Let me start by saying that we are looking at the budget very carefully, and it really is daunting to know that the most recent forecast by the Leeds School of Business shows that our sales tax revenues are going to be somewhere around $1.3 billion less from 2021 to 2026. So this is a long-term issue that we need to look at, not just as the RTD Board of Directors, but for the entire region, to ensure that we have this mass transit program that serves the whole community. So that's the first thing. It is very, very unsettling to know that this is such a daunting task. But as a native Coloradoan and in a collaboration like this, I feel very hopeful that we can come together and come up with some resolutions and some plans of action. And I think the one thing that I really truly believe in is that if everybody comes together and works together, we can come up with some pretty amazing plans of actions to move forward. It's not going to be easy, but I will say to you that I think that this committee will be invaluable, not just to the RTD Board of Directors, but to the region, and taking a deep dive look into RTD, because I think that there are some misconceptions about RTD. We know we have a credibility problem. We know we have a trust problem. And we are here to say we really have nothing to hide. And in fact, RTD is one of the most audited agencies in the state. We've opened up our books, and we really look forward to having a fresh perspective and an unbiased look to make sure that we're doing things the right way. And if we need to change things, we're open to new ideas and trying new things. So, you know, I'm very optimistic about this committee and how we can work together.
Governor Steve Steger from 9 News. Couple of questions for you. Number one, I know that there have been calls in the past for an appointed board or a state appointed power to take over RTD to try to make some of this reform. There was legislation to reform the agency. Why take this advisory approach instead of something with a bit more teeth? And the second question on the train you talked about at the top there, the train to Longmont and to Boulder, do you think people should be prepared to not ever see that train, just knowing the financial trouble that RTD is in right now? Are you ready to tell people in Boulder and Longmont perhaps that train won't come?
Well, look, the train has to come. It was part of the 2004 ballot initiative. So, you know, RTD is required to deliver the train. The actual plan was referenced in the ballot initiative. It's a binding vote of the people. The people can vote for something different, of course, if it's put before the voters in a different way. I think the disappointment is that it's behind schedule, and hopefully some of this process can figure out how that schedule for all of RTD's promises can be realistically updated, can make sure that we get the help for the riders that need it the most, and that we can benefit the most from a regional transportation system, because there is a lot of frustration for taxpayers who have been paying for something that isn't just 1 or 2 years late, but could even be decades late. So, but that's not the only piece. It's really about a system that we all value, that we have to fix, that we have to get right. We're all interconnected. A rider, you know, in South Denver, you know, might very well commute to Thornton or to Broomfield or to Westminster or to Longmont, or vice versa, or, you know, visiting relatives in different parts of the metropolitan area. So it all works together. It's not about any one project. Of course, I bring a focus, as many do, of making sure that we can find a way that RTD can honor the commitments that were made to voters, or if they need to amend those, go back to some kind of vote. When it comes to governance, it's important to get governance right. And this commission will take a serious look at national governance models of what works and what doesn't work. And RTD has been really good about being willing to include that in the scope of this committee. So it's not about a particular outcome, whether there's appointed, elected, a combination, regional governance, local government officials. What we want to find a governance system that works. And I know that RTD board is also committed to finding a governance system that works to deliver on our transportation needs for the Denver metro area.
Thank you, Governor and everyone. This is Ed Seelover of the Denver Business Journal. Two-part question. First, I want to understand what the state's role with RTD is right now. Exactly what power does the state have over RTD? And I understand this isn't changing, but this is just looking at that. And secondly, I know there's been a lot of effort to look not just at RTD, but at other ways of moving people around, whether it be Lyft or Uber or other things like that. How are you going to take into account in this accountability committee the things that are needed to interact between RTD and some of these other ways of moving people around?
So I want to go to our legislators on this, but note that RTD is created under statute, and that statute can be amended. In fact, there have been proposals to amend different parts of the governance or other aspects of it. And part of what comes out of this could very well be statutory recommendations to the legislature. Some of it might be things RTD do. Some of it might be things that other regional governments are involved with. So all of that is within the scope of work of this commission, and I'd like to turn it over to our legislators.
Yeah. Thank you, Governor. That is right. You know, our response, we have a responsibility for RTD because we created RTD. I mean, obviously not us personally, but the general did. Question. Unfortunately, you know, the work with respect to looking at our transportation system as a whole and modernizing it, where it comes to funding and also structure, is something that Senator Winter and I were working very hard on. That got just completely blown away by the pandemic as well. But that is work that we're still want to do. We still have this commission is not charged with solving all the state's transportation system, transportation questions. We have a lot of those. We've got that work, you know, that work is happening in other working groups. There's other working groups looking at that as well, and we're going to keep doing that. But this group is focused like a laser on how to create the best RTD that we can have. Obviously, interfacing with folks who are working on the broader questions, I think, will be important. So that work is going on. I mean, it's been a little bleak because the hope for new funding has gone away, and so it's been hard to have the conversations about modernizing the overall transportation system. But that work is still going on, but that isn't the charge of this committee. The charge of this committee is not to, you know, boil the ocean with respect to transportation across the state. It is to help build the best RTD that we can build.
And I'll just add to that, you know, last year we had Senate Bill 239, which was looking at different ways that people use transportation and the possibility of different types of fees, which we'll continue to look at in the future. But even without that on the table, RTD has had great partnerships with Uber, for example, that you can get your last mile, pay for your RTD ticket all within the app. And so what is the most efficient use of resources, right? And so working with the disability community on paratransit and do things like Lyft or Uber, fill in those gaps to have a strong paratransit system. And how are we most efficiently using tax dollars? How are we creating a complete system? And knowing with RTD, both, it's not just Uber and Lyft, but Denver is doing some really innovative things on transportation. And how can a local government help fill in those gaps in order to create a complete transportation system? And that's why we have folks on this committee that do have background in economic development. They do have background in urban planning because as Representative Gray said, we're not expecting RTD to build a unicorn or raise a unicorn, but what we are expecting them to do is to work very creatively to come up with solutions that moves people around.
Hey there, it's Megan Lopez with Denver 7. First, a question about the independence of the committee. I know you guys said it was independent, but I'm already getting some questions about whether it's truly independent, given the fact that some of the committee members, potential committee members, or their stakeholders in it. And so I'm wondering how you guys are guaranteeing that. And also, if you can talk a little bit about transparency, that was something that the bill that was co-sponsored by Senator Tate, for instance, had mentioned that it wants more transparency to be able to see financial dealings. So how is this committee going to deal with transparency?
Sure, I'll start with that. We worked really hard to make sure that this committee is 100% independent, which is why RTD members are not making the appointments. The governor and Representative Matt Gray and I are making the appointments. RTD is also not running the committee. We are working with other local agencies to run the committee, to convene the committee. RTD has agreed that this committee gets all access to things like financial records, financial decisions. Also, this committee will be making concrete recommendations to RTD on what actions they should take. And part of that scope of work we're asking about is their financial dealings, is their background on that. And if RTD chooses not to take a recommendation, they actually have to put that in writing and publicly stand by that. So we aren't forcing RTD's hand on anything, but we are making all the recommendations incredibly public. And if they choose not to take a recommendation, that's going to be incredibly public as well. And ultimately, they are an elected board, and public pressure does mean something. So we're making this very transparent, and the actual scope of the commission is to make recommendations on future transparency proposals.
And I want to thank you all for participating. You know, what you've heard from Chair Winter and Chair Gray and myself and the RTD board chair is really that, look, we need to roll up our sleeves and get to work. It's easy to complain. It's easy to talk about what RTD doesn't do, but let's try to figure out what RTD can do and make it the very best RTD that Colorado taxpayers and residents really deserve. And that's going to be the work of this committee: best practice in governance, best practice in finance, and a plan for the future and a vision for the future about how RTD can fit into the overall Denver metro area to help meet the transportation needs of businesses and individuals, including people with disabilities. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi,